This is the 22nd season of Bass Talk Live. BTL is presented by Bass Cat Boats, Strike King Lures, AFTCO, Pro Guide Batteries, Spro, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Beatdown Outdoors, and Sunline.
BTL coming at you.
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we're going to talk about bass fishing. It's June 30th. It's hard to believe it's halfway through the year, way more than halfway through the year as far as fishing is concerned. If you kind of want to get caught up on everything that's been going on in the world of professional bass fishing. Last week, Dave Rush and I from bestontour.net did a show where we went through the NPFL, the Bass Pro Tour, the Elite Series, the EQs, pretty much everything that's going on. Plus, over there, they have a comprehensive schedule that shows where everything is and what's happening with every single tournament. Back live for a show, how to record a show yesterday. Actually went out to Orange County, California for 3 or 4 days. I am now an uncle, which I did not see coming. So my wife's sister had a baby, so I got to for the second time ever in my life hold a baby. I did not hold the baby against my will. It was my choice. I told her, I said, if I'm gonna hold this baby, it's gonna be my choice. And I did. I ended up feeding her. Anyway, we had a good time. Went out to the ocean, got to watch I want to say off of the pier, a grunt. Does that make sense? Is that a fish that you would catch off of the California, a grunt? And then some sand bass, but like one of the types of sea bass, and then everyone was just trying to catch bait to catch a big giant shark. But we're back, and one of the cool stories that happened over the weekend is the NPFL took place and Greg Vinson won, which I was like, man, it's been a while since Greg Vinson's won, and we'll talk to him about it. And then when I started looking into it, read the article and stuff, and I was like, oh, how in the world is that Greg Vinson's first major, like, 6-figure payday? Like, I remember, we'll talk to him about it. I remember the Classic, but that was back in like 2012. I believe that was the Chris Lane, the Kneeling Classic, where he came in, he had that big bag on day 2. And it's like, Greg, such a stand-up guy, like, just had to stand there and watch Chris Lane go nuts when he won the Classic. But I think everyone thought at that time, Greg is fishing so good, so consistent, he'll get his chance. And then you had Edwin Evers, who went absolutely nuts in 2019. I believe that was like the first red crest on the river, where he was catching them like every cast, and it was every fish over a pound counts. He didn't really give much a chance, and Greg finished third in that. And then he wins this past NPFL, lifts a trophy, and he's like, man, that was a long 20 years. And I was like, wait. What the heck? Like, I know you chronicle, like, I think you chronicle so far, like, I remember when Bill Lowen got that first win on the Elite Series, and he was like, holy cow, I got it. And then are still waiting for like Chris Salday. And like, there's those guys that you come up that you're like, holy cow, you hadn't won before. And Greg was one of those. And it's an interesting thing to talk about, because it's good that you've been around that long, but then it's also be frustrating. Well, we'll let the guy who just got the win. Am I somewhat capturing the emotions of what it's like, Greg?
Oh, absolutely, man. I've got to say, when I started this deal, I left a good state job and, decided to give it a year and had to take leave without pay to just even try professional fishing. And, I'm a Christian. I said a prayer when I started all that. I was like, Lord, I don't want to be rich or famous. I just want to be able to fish for a living. And, 20 years later, I was like, man, I got exactly what I asked for, I wasn't seeking the win so much. I'm a competitor, but it was, I wanted, I just wanted to be able to fish for a living, and I got a chance to do that for 20 years. But along the way, when you get close so many times and you're capable of it, earthly Greg wanted to win, man. I wanted a big check and I wanted a trophy, and I think that's natural. And to get close in some big ones like the Classic, like Red Crest, like Opens, like PAAs, and like Strand Championships, and along the line, to be so close so many times and know a lot of times you were one fish away, and it just not to happen, it starts to wear on you a little bit. But it was my time. You know, a lot of guys, if you ask them that, you know, have gone long periods without a win or been close a lot of times, you know, think back to our good friend Aaron Martins and how close he was so many times over the years. And you know, he said that and so many others, you know, when you're in that situation, all you can do is put yourself in a position to win. And if you keep doing that, and if you do that enough times, when it's your time, I think it'll happen. And I think, you know, the good Lord decided it was my time finally. And I'm grateful for that.
So when you joined the Elite Series in 2009, I believe was your first year, but you quit your full-time job, benefits, the whole 9 yards in 2008 when you went to fish the FLW tour at the time, or?
Yeah, I started from scratch. December 22nd, 2006, was my last day at the state. And I mean, I literally left that to be able to try to qualify to get to the elites. I was only able to get into 2 opens that year. So I fished some FLW stuff to kind of fill in the gaps. The next year, I got to fish all of the opens, and that was the year, you know, that I qualified to get into the elites. So it was a process, you know, it's just starting from scratch to get off the ground. And each year is kind of like, you know, hey, let's see what happens next year, you know.
Wait, and, let me get this straight. You quit. You changed careers is the way I'll say it. Because when you say quit, it makes it sound like it's irresponsible. But you changed careers, but you changed careers before. It wasn't like you were like, oh my God, I fished the opens and I made the Elite Series and now we have a decision to make. I didn't realize this. You opted to put all of your focus on trying to qualify for the Elite Series before you were on the Elite Series.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's how it went down. You know, my wife, Stephanie, I got to give her a lot of credit, you know, and anybody, you know, that has a girlfriend or wife or, you know, family, you know, you need that support. And she was supportive at that time. She was working. You know, we were pretty frugal, you know, and I was able to take, I think it's important note, I was able to take leave without pay on, you know, to be able to kind of stick my toe in the water on professional bass angling and fish a few tournaments. So I got a chance to see, you know, how I could stack up against, you know, guys at the professional level. And, you know, the results were good, you know, early on. I was seeing that I could compete with, you know, limited practice times, things like that. And I was like, you know, I feel like if I can pour everything into this, I think I can compete. You know, and I don't know how far that'll go. I don't know if it'll be, you know, at the opens level or, you know, back then it was the Strin series that I was fishing on the FLW side. So I really didn't know, but each year was like, hey, let's see what our limits are, you know?
Let's start at some of the key moments. So like I've done it different ways. Usually you start with like, hey, congratulations, you won. Tell me about the win. And then you kind of go back to some key moments, but you've had some not crazy, but you've had some career defining moments.
Sure.
Along the way. I mean, you had second place in an open as it went to it, but what sticks out to me, and maybe it's just because when I first started covering it, was how well you took that 2012 Bassmaster Classic. It was kind of, I guess I would say, like a 3-horse race. You had Chris Lane, you had Keith Poche. Everyone was kind of jockeying. One of the things was you stayed in second place consistent for that entire tournament. But I remember the moment, you know, Chris had that big 19-pound bag, and then he had the 15, that little tougher third day when it came in and you were standing there and it was the second place. I feel like that had to be really hard to take so professionally at the time and then move on, because you also have to remember, for so many years, you were one of the top 3 consistent check cashers on the Elite Series. You were like 85% as far as top 50s, which a $5,000 entry fee, you get $10,000 if you got it back. But that was kind of like right in the middle. You were established, you were on a streak of checks, and then that classic happened. Look back at that classic now, decade plus later. What did that day, that tournament do for you? Positively, negatively, change your career, your focus of your career, or am I like making way too much out of it?
No, you're spot on, Matt. People forget my son was 9 days old, our only son. He was 9 days old when I left for that tournament. And so, all of a sudden you're feeling that responsibility. It's just not just you and your wife anymore. You've got a child and you're wanting to be a provider, and, they make a lot of sacrifices while we're out there. And a lot of folks are aware of that. And, not only the time, but the energy and the focus, you're putting into your career. And I had poured a lot into the off season for that event. I'd made 3 trips over there pre-practicing, trying to learn the river. And so, we got in a position to win, and I felt like it was my time then. And but it wasn't. It was Chris's time when it all turned out. He was about to leave. He gave it, I think, 5 more minutes, 10 more minutes. He's like, I'm out of here. It's not happening. Dude caught a 7-pounder on the Red River and pulls a 2 and beats me by 3 pounds. It was Chris's time, man. And but that was, on one end, it was really tough to take, because the differential in payout was just astronomical. Back then the Classic paid $500,000, man. That would have set me and Stephanie engaged for a pretty good while, and second paid like 40, I think. So there was the financial aspect of it, but career wise, it put me on the map and gave me credibility with sponsors, which we all know in the long run, that's really, the things that you can count on. Those sponsor relationships, those can give you longevity in the sport also. And so that was huge for me to get the credibility that, hey, this guy's for real. He can compete, at the highest level. He can compete in big tournaments. And, and then I got the opportunity to represent sponsors and deliver, on that end. So that part was really good as far as, giving me the next several years, to fish. Was just gaining that credibility.
Yeah. So that was, for the newer listeners who have just gotten into bass fishing over the past 3 or 4 years, there was a time when a strong Classic finish, particularly a strong Classic finish where you are a part of the storyline for all 3 days. It didn't work as much if you were in 15th and then finished second, but if you were one of the top 3 guys for all 3 days, the general consensus was the win is fantastic. It's nice. It sets you, but you are doing more for your career by being in the hunt all 3 of those days, with the TV coverage, with the storylines, with that coverage. And like I said, I was key. You were second in that tournament the entire day. So you were always part of the central storyline. So there were direct sponsorships that came. There was direct money that went into Greg Vinson Fishing, the Vinson family. Even though you didn't get the win, you saw the benefits of that solid performance for years to come.
Without a doubt. Yeah. It wasn't anything compared to what winning would be like, obviously. Yeah. But at the same time, we desperately needed it. I desperately needed it. And it was very important, for next year's after that.
I mentioned one of the things is you've been extremely consistent. I don't have the numbers, but I would venture to say, to go back like 28th to 43rd place is like where you live, like close to there, but not close. Is that, and I say that as a compliment, Greg.
I take it as a compliment, Matt, because I know who I'm competing against those last years. I didn't, since 2009, I've competed against the toughest competition I could qualify to fish against, which was, the Bassmaster Elite Series at the time. Then when we got the invite to Bass Pro Tour, which was a pleasant surprise to me to even be invited, was kind of a stamp of approval on my career. Come over and fish the Bass Pro Tour and compete against a combination of the best in the industry. So, when you're consistently finishing high enough to cash checks against a field like that, that's important.
And if you look at a lot of talk when they went from the 80 guys down to the 50 guys, and now there's going to be 5 more guys cut. Like, once again, on the Bass Pro Tour, you're in the same position you were on the Elite Series. It seemed like you're like pretty much always safely in, cashing checks more than 50% of the time, like solid career stats, but not like mind-blowing stuff.
Right.
I mean, it's impressive the
Just
level
steady.
of consistency as a guy who strives for consistency in the Bassmaster Opens. I can't tell you how appreciative you are of watching a guy and being like, dude, this guy catches them. New York, Florida, Texas, Michigan, everywhere in between, always in the mix. There's not a place that you go where you don't feel like you can't cash a check.
Yeah, that's true, man. And, and then that kind of leads to, the last year or two on the Bass Pro Tour been, my performance hasn't been what I expect. And I can come up with different, variables I think that are in play there, but, I'm not used to finishing, near the bottom, consistently like that. And, so I have some, there's various reasons that I can think of, that, for some reason that I haven't had the performance the last couple of years over there that I would expect.
If it's on the water stuff, I'd love to hear about it. If you don't want to talk about the reasons, you don't have to. But I mean, this BTL, let's go down a wormhole. I'll just put it on yours.
Well,
that's what we talk about here, Greg.
The only thing that's really changed, one is, they whittled the field down, we started with 80, they whittled it down to 50 based on, who was catching them all the time, over the past 5 or 6 years. So naturally the field gets condensed to the highest performers over the course of time. So there's that, and then you're trying to finish in the top half of that group, which is, it's crazy hard to do already. And then you also, I think the biggest thing for me is the combined forward sonar versus no forward sonar stuff. And all of us are kind of geeky, bass geeks, mentally, and it's at times it's our strength, and other times it's our biggest weakness is how we're wired mentally. And I didn't even realize it, because I'm comfortable doing both. But I think the whole, you can use it part of the day and then the other part of the day you can't. I haven't done a good job processing that, mentally. And I think that's shown in my performance. That's the only big difference. I've competed against this same group of guys all these years and been consistent. The only biggest difference is, hey, sometimes you can use forward sonar, sometimes you can't. Mentally, I'm like, do I do that?
So that's something like during a tournament, you'll struggle with, like, should I have chosen this period? Should I have turned it on for here? I wonder if I blew my chance there. So that's something that regardless of what it is, you haven't really determined the best, I guess, strategy or game plan for determining what period you're turning it on.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a basket case, and
interesting. I never even thought about that.
And I'll give you the example, Matt. First tournament that we went to that type of format, we were at Conroe last year, and so it was the first one. It's like, pick your period you're going to use forward sonar. I'm on them, dude. Like, I'm in there. Like, I've got them locked in. Like, I mean, 75% of the field did too, but I had them dialed in, and I could catch them. And I elected to wait until later in the day because I felt like when the sun got up, it kind of grouped the fish up and they were feeding better. That's what I experienced in practice. So I elected not to fish for them the first period. And, we get started, and all of a sudden the score tracker is just going off, man, just lighting up. And I'm like, oops, and I dug such a big hole, like it was right out of the gate. My tournament was essentially done, because of a bad decision right there. And those fish got lit up so much.
And who's catching them and whether or not they're using their forward facing sonar.
Man, but there was no way you could catch them anywhere else.
Gotcha. I gotcha.
Like,
so you knew that multiple guys had found that school of, and I think I know what you're talking about, that school of fish, and that they're going to be toasted by the time you turn yours on.
They got lit up, and it was obviously being the first day of the tournament, those fish were, you could catch the most. Then by the second day, I'm like, oh yeah, I'll start in the morning. Well, the fish got caught. So many got caught the first day. It was a mountain you couldn't climb, at that point. And so that's when it really hit home. Like, this is you got to make the right decision. You got to know when you can capitalize on this forward sonar period. And if you don't make the most of it, man, you may not ever make it up the rest of the tournament. That was the message I left that tournament with.
Yeah. I have found it very interesting. So I love that MLF allows you to see what period they used it in, whether they didn't, who used it. And it seemed like when you went to the you get to choose your period. This isn't going to be 100% statistically accurate, but it's going to be a general from what I've noticed of covering it. Almost everyone in the first year was like, first period, let's get it out of the way. Let's get up there. It was like 80%. And then you'd see, like a Talk, a Bobby Lane, a Chris Lane, maybe a Mark Davis, who was like, I ain't turning it on forever. Like, I don't even have one, which I'm going to get to that part too. But then you started to see groups of guys who, like, for the first tournament would have it, and then there'd be like, they would wait until the third period, and then they would have like the comeback. Yeah. This year I've seen more strategy, and it has to be strategy, because the first year it was, hey, let's get all of our forward facing sonar fish, let's catch our scope fish, let's go do it. And you'd see them all interweaving around each other and stuff. This year I feel like there's been more and more guys. It's completely spread out. It's very interesting. The guys who used to always do first period, now you see a lot of guys that are waiting until the third period to do it. You're seeing it change based on fisheries. You're seeing more guys who don't, like I said, the Rojas, who are competing. Like, look at what Takahiro just did on Hartwell. Yeah. Things like that at the beginning. What Mark Davis has done and stuff, where they're in their groove, where they're not turning it on. I think some of them might not be turning it on to prove a point for something that they want, but it's crazy to me how the strategy has evolved just from that. Hey, we got to make sure we capitalize on it, to like time of the day. What are other guys going to do? Where am I going to be able to have my strength on it? And I think that as long as that format continues, I've done a whole show. I think there's something in the works. This is just my opinion personally, but there's been some strategic videos posted by some big names who I think they may be a behind the scenes push to even reduce the amount of forward facing in the future. That's just me. That's just what I've noticed. I love watching that. And it's interesting to hear from you that is one of the mental hurdles, one of the struggles that you have to go through every single tournament.
Yeah. I mean, I've been using forward sonar. I was one of the first guys when Garmin came out with it. It came over to Garmin because of it. When I got to see it in person, and so for 9 years now, I guess close to 10. I'm used to using it. I'm good with it. Sometimes maybe not good enough if I look around. But I'm really good with it. But there are other guys that the specialists are really great. It's an art, and so but just being able to process that, okay, do I use it, do I not, when can I capitalize on it, and having that experience, that first tournament last year, just it was crazy, trying to adjust to that, and it kind of freaks you out. You're like, you don't want to miss your window, and it's just a whole nother element to process. So that's probably a big part of it the last couple of years.
All right, let's switch gears then. You don't have to worry about the forward face it over on the NPFL. I've given them a lot of props. They had to do something different to set themselves. They made it. They put their foot down. You're seeing an incredible number of veteran anglers, of young anglers, of guys who are on other ones. You mentioned your family and stuff. Was it a tough decision to fish the NPFL and the Bass Pro Tour in the same season? I know that it's not that many weeks, but when you take into account the travel and the time in between and the rotation, like, it is a big commitment to say 8 or 9, depending on whether heavy hitters and all that, and then also throw in 6 non-scoping all throughout it. What was your decision to say, what, I'm going to fish both and have a full 14, 15 tournament schedule throughout the year?
Yeah, Matt, it'd been a long time since I fished multiple tours. I did that starting out because I had to, had to be out there, I had to be fishing, I had to be cashing checks because I didn't have the sponsor support, and I was sort of figuring out what direction I wanted to go. And then the past several years, I've been able to, just stay with the elites. That was a big enough platform. It took enough time and energy and money to do that. But, I got into last year, I kind of got in trouble when they made the switch to, chopping the field down on the Bass Pro Tour. And it's like, okay, I'm going from being consistent guy to like, hey, I'm safe for years, to now my head's on the chopping block, and it's like, oh, all right, what are we going to do next? And, if this happens, and so it was partially because of that, and partially maybe because of what I talked about with the format, maybe things sort of starting to get away from what I felt like my strengths were. And it was something I was hearing good things from guys that were fishing NPFL. It was attractive to go back and just, get back to our roots of, fishing without forward sonar and just fishing, and so there was that element too. In the end, it was like, hey, I need to figure out if this Bass Pro Tour thing goes south, what are we going to do next? And is it going to be NPFL? Is it going to be Pro Circuit? Are we going to go back to Opens, try to qualify for elites? All this, that was my off season last year. It was processing all that. As it turned out, I got invited back to the Bass Pro Tour, and I took about 3 days trying to decide whether I wanted to do that or not. For a few reasons. One of the big ones is, the platform for your sponsors. You want to be in a place where you can deliver for your sponsors a platform that's big enough. And, I felt like NPFL has shown growth over the years, as it turns out they have. And, would it be a big enough platform to deliver for my sponsors? Now that we've got an NPFL Shield, absolutely. I mean, I've got, we've been able to deliver for the sponsors on that side. So that's been a huge thing. But that's where that came from, signing up for 2. Hopefully we'll get locked in to something, for next year. But the NPFL is looking pretty good right now.
You're from Alabama. You went on Logan Martin. I know you're familiar with a lot of the lakes in Alabama, but there's also a lot of lakes in Alabama. You always interview the Alabama guys, and they're like, hell, I've only fished there 3 times in my life. I just go down the road to this lake. What was your familiarity with Logan Martin in the summertime? No live scope. Like, I'll be honest, you guys caught him a lot better than I thought you would.
Well, Coos is good. And the field did, man. And I think people need to understand how competitive the field is on NPFL first. These are good anglers. I know a bunch of them. I've fished against them for years. And there's a lot of guys I don't know. And then when I start looking into it, they're pretty dang good. So now that we've addressed that one, it's the Coosa is just a great fishery, man. It's got the beauty of it is you got quality spotted bass, and spotted bass will bite a lot of times when largemouth won't, across the country. Are they easy? Not like northern smallmouth? No. It's not going to, just because you get around them doesn't mean you're going to catch them, but they will bite a little better than the largemouth. The last time I had fished a tournament on Logan Martin was whenever that open was that I finished second. And I think that was, 10 years ago, maybe more. I don't even know. That was the last tournament. I'd maybe fished it 2 or 3 times. We had a team series there last year.
Okay.
But you just show up that final day cold turkey and you just go and hope you run into them. And it was a scoping thing in that one. But something about Logan Martin, I fished Jordan all the time. It's the last lake on the Coosa. I fished a lot. We fished Logan in local tournaments over the years ago. But to me, it's kind of like a combination of Lake Martin, where I grew up, which is different than Logan Martin. Very different.
I know several guys who have booked houses on Lake Martin for tournaments on Logan Martin, and then everyone shows up and goes like, what the hell, Joe? Are you booked a VRBO on the wrong lake? Anyway,
it happens all the time, right? And once you fish both of them, you'll know the difference pretty quick. But to me, Logan is, in a way, especially the lower end, is kind of a combination of Lake Martin and Lake Jordan put together, which are the 2 lakes I fish all the time for fun. And a lot of docks, a lot of spotted bass. You got that, traditional Coosa River current is always in play. It was basically flatline this past week, which, I told my roommate Bradley, he was asking me, we were leaving the Bass Pro Tour that we had. And I was unfortunately, I was getting ready to go start practice for the NPFL while he was getting ready to fish the knockout round at Grand. And, so I'm out there rigging for for practice. He's rigging to fish another day at Grand, and that's how I kind of put it. I was like, yeah, it's kind of like if you combine, Martin and Jordan, is the way it'll fish. A lot of docks, a lot of spots, good largemouth, but you got the river element in play too, where you can fish, a lot of fish up and down the river, but everything looks the same, which if you can find something good is special too.
So you go into the final day, another shot to win this thing. And I wanna pull up the picture. We kind of talked about it because it gets to this point. Oh, come on, there to pull up. So that picture right there, what did it feel like looking back to that? What'd you say? What day was it? December 22nd? 2006.
Yeah.
To June 27th, 2026.
Yeah.
Literally 20 years. And it's your turn to lift the trophy, to get your hands on it. What was that moment like when there were no more fish to be weighed in, when you'd gotten past Hackney and John Canada and all the guys up there, and you were like, holy cow, I get to lift the trophy?
Yeah, man. It was, like I said, on stage, it was overwhelming because of, I know people know, but and a lot of people don't know what we pour into this sport, physically and emotionally, the sacrifices that we make, but, also the sacrifices that our family makes. And, you're 100. The only way you can make it in this sport is that you are 100% invested, pouring everything you have into it, because the guys that you got to beat are doing the same thing. And most of the time we leave a tournament, even if you have a good tournament, you have a top 10 or you have a top 20, you leave disappointed because you didn't win. You're like, hey, I'm glad I got a good check. I needed that. I got some exposure from my sponsors. I needed that. But every time, unless you win, you leave with some level of disappointment. And so for 20 years, even when I had good tournaments and I was happy I had good tournaments, there was that underlying disappointment that I didn't win. Every time you play a game, I was a competitor. Matt, you played hockey, right?
Yep.
If you're a competitor, a sports guy, when you play a game, you play to win. And after a while, it gets tough coming up short, So I was, on one end, grateful that I got to do it for 20 years. It was way more than I ever thought I would, But on the other end, like I said, Earthly Greg wanted a trophy and a big check, a big Barker check, they call it. And we finally got it done. It was time. Good Lord decided it was time.
I mean, even when you started a little bit before and you started, like, you can remember the guys who won in their first couple of years. It was like Derek Remitz. Holy cow. He won in his first year. Casey Ashley on Smith Mountain. Oh my God. He won in his rookie year. Like, it seems like over the past 5-6 years, you take like a Trey McKinney and a Banks Shaw, and you look at these guys and then you see what the crazy role that Wheeler's been on. It was like KVD, a little bit of Edwin, a little bit of Ski. Aaron would win a lot, but I mean, you would expect guys to get 5, 6, 7 years into their career before they contended for a win. And now, especially, you watch it, you see over other BPT, it's guys just come in and it's just like, oh, I'm really disappointed I haven't, won a trophy in my first 7 professional tournaments. Like, I'm really, really letting myself down on this. One of the things that I thought was wild was on that final day in your article, you said you dumped a mega like right off the hopper, like one that you knew was completely have changed the outlook of the day.
Oh man, that was such a roller coaster, and now that they know the backstory. It's been 20 years, we were been close so many times. The day started out tough, man. I was thinking, hey, I'll get a couple of good, top water bites, then we can go pick away at these deep fish. And I mean, I couldn't even hardly get a bite on top early. I mean, I went to the first deep place I went to out of desperation because I wasn't catching anything anywhere else. It was just like, hey, well, let's go see if we can go ahead and start catching some, and pull up to one of them. And, I get a bite and set the hook on the spinning rod, and it just it's a big one, man, like just dead weight. You feel him shaking the head, trying to throw it down there. And so, I always take my time with them, fishing around cover, just, get them out of the cover, try to wear them down. With these largemouth are terrible. They're down there 15, 18 feet deep, and you hook them, and at first they don't even know what's going on, because you're hooking them on a spinning rod. And then as soon as they figure it out, they hit it straight to the top. So I'm trying to trying to lead the fish and stay ahead of it to keep him from being able to get up. And he jumps right by my motor. It's a 4.5 or bigger. It's at least 4.5. It throws my bait, man. Like first good bite I get.
You didn't do anything wrong.
Nothing I could have done different. Yeah. The hook just didn't land it. But at the same time, you're just like, why? Why? Like I'm doing it right, man. It took me a second to kind of gather myself. But it was very rare to pitch back into one of these places, especially if you lost one, to get another bite. It was rare if you caught one to throw back in there and get another bite. Usually you kind of have to come back after they settle down. I pitch back in there once I settle myself, ease back up, pitch back in there. I catch a 3-4 spot, and spots are way harder to land than the largemouth generally because they're so crazy. But it told me these fish have reloaded overnight, or that because that same place I fished, I think 3 times the day before. On the second day, they just didn't bite for some reason, and now I've got spots and largemouth have shown back up in this place. I'm like, okay, we got 10 more places to run. If they've shown back up, we got time to make it up. So it was bad to lose the 4.5, but it was good to see that the fish have shown back up.
And then you caught another big one, and then called late in the day. So you knew coming in, you're like, I'm going to have a shot at this thing. Yeah.
It was, so that last fish, I'm sitting on a 1.7 in the live well. I've got a 4.5 pounder in there. All the other ones are basically 3 pounds or better. So I know I'm sitting on 4 good fish with a 1.7 in there. And I'm like, if I can catch a fish even close to 3 pounds or better, we're going to have a legit shot, because it would be close to being the biggest bag of the tournament. I pull back up on the spot where I lost the 4.5, and I think it was my second pitch in there. I get a bite and set the hook, and I drowned that fish, man. I was like, I'm not giving you a chance. Like I pulled an Aaron, got out in front of it. Aaron was so good with a spinning rod, being able to wear fish down so they didn't come in too hot, so he could land them well, and just stayed ahead of that fish forever. I think it took me almost 2 minutes to land the fish.
What do you mean stayed ahead of the fish? Like walk that through.
Using your boat and your trolling motor to fight the fish, rather than bringing them in so hot where they're up, down, they're jumping around. You're going to light line. They can dive on you. It's pretty good. Well, we do it a lot with smallmouth. Matt, you've caught a bunch of, how the smallmouth are. If you bring them, you can land them, bringing them in hot, but they can really get you.
You gotta get a little bit lucky sometimes.
You gotta get a little lucky sometimes, and so I used the trolling motor in the boat to kind of keep my line in front of the fish and lead the fish. So
so the boat is actually ahead of the fish. You're almost pulling the fish around, letting him get down there, get tired, instead of letting him get up to where he's always facing one direction where he doesn't have a chance.
The boat. You're right. Just
gotcha.
Kind of stay ahead of that fish.
That's ridiculously hard to do, though. It's easier on smallmouth because you're doing it the same on every fish, because once you do it up north and you do it once, you get your system down. And a deal like this, that had to be so hard to do.
Well, Matt, here's the thing. Like I've hooked this fish. He's already jumped, so I've already got it. I did get he made that initial jump when he came out of the cover. So I know I'm looking at the fish that I just
you're looking at the potentially winning fish, Greg.
I'm looking at the winning fish, right? And I want so bad, to just put the heat on him, get him in the boat. but I lost that 4.5 at the motor, and I know it can happen. And I'm like, just, stay cool, take your time. Let's not mess it up, wear the fish down so that when I do go to grab him, and even after all of that, I finally get him up and I'm ready to go for the scoop. And it's like he sees my hand coming and he goes, pins me to the rub rail after all of that. And luckily the line held up. The hook didn't pull. The next trip around, he comes back up and we get the scoop and we got the fish to potentially win. I know, nothing's done until it's done, but I had that feeling when I got the fish in the boat that we were going to win.
Had you ever had that feeling before in
no,
20 years of major tournaments?
Not in one of these. No, I had some local tournaments like that back in the day, but
different feeling with 100K on the line and after, I mean.
So yeah, when I landed that fish and I looked at the GoPro footage yesterday, and I was going to put it out, but I decided not to. But I called the 1.7. I put the 3.6 or 3.7, whatever it was, in there, and I just broke down on the live wells, man. Like right there, it's like I knew, and I just said, "Thank you, God." I just broke down right there on the live wells. I knew what was underneath me was, my first big win. And, at least I hoped that it was. And as it turned out, that was the case, man. It was enough. That fish was the one that did it. Canada caught a mega bag too, and made a big jump.
Mm-hmm.
And, you go back and do the math and look at, the weight that we gained with that last fish. That was the coal. That was the one that closed the deal. So it was my time.
I've gone back and forth with guys in the past. There's some, you hear, "Oh, it's fishing, man. Like, don't look like an idiot. Like, I hate the guys who like cry or are emotional when they catch a big fish. Like, just figure it out. Like, realize it's just fishing." And my opinion on that has always been that the fact that it's fishing is just the vessel. It's just what it is. That the emotional response to that, in a lot of genuine emotional response to that, has nothing to do with the fact that you just caught a 3.5 pound fish. It has to do with what you've mentioned: the family, the time, the sacrifices, the dedication that you've put behind it. And that fish is just a representation of all of the hard work and sacrifice that you, your team, your family, and the people behind you have put into it. So that emotion isn't directed towards the fish. The fish is just a representation of the 20 years of hard work that went in to get to that moment.
Exactly, man. Well said. Well said.
All drop shot fish?
Mostly, yeah. I caught a couple on a spoon, caught one on the urchin. Everything else were drop shot fish, which, like I said, flatline current, the fish weren't active. You could graph them, like some of these fish you could graph. I graphed them. I could tell there were big ones in there,
mm-hmm.
and other guys did too, but they were so hard to get them to bite.
Pretty standard drop shot setup, or walk me through what you were drop shotting with.
Weight. Used a rebar hook because I was fishing around some cover, Texas rig, a 7-inch worm. One of the big things was marinating them in bait fuel. I think, more than I've always known bait fuel helped.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been able to watch that on forward sonar at times, see it make a difference. I think this was, I don't think I win if I don't use it. If that, I feel comfortable saying that. I marinated the baits in the bag. When I first
for like days or months, are we talking like
just the night before? Just put a little in the night before.
Like Takumi stuff. Like you were like, "Hey, I put this in 2021, and they're finally ready."
No, it's I think giving it some time. Of course, it was so hot, man. Like if I had to get into another bag of baits that hadn't been, once I knew I was getting low, I could put a little bit in the next bag coming up. And it's like 400 degrees under the lid of that. Under the deck of the Phoenix there because it was so hot last week, and so it's in there just cooking, and but yeah, I think that made a big difference, and a lot of it was a reaction bite. It's a reaction bite the way I was fishing it. Those fish didn't want to eat. They eat when the current's on, they eat in the afternoon, they eat at night, and they eat right at daylight. But when we were fishing the hours of the tournament, those fish aren't eating. They're just, I mean, you can see on the graph, they're just sitting there. They don't move. They're not doing anything.
And you're seeing it on what, 360?
I had Garmin 360 going, but I would drift over them and I could see them on Clearview.
Oh, okay. So literally,
so,
like the 2D
I'd pull
stuff.
up, say if it was a brush pile, I'd pull up there and I know where the brush pile is. I pitch in there, hit it. I catch one or I don't catch one, and I'd be like, well, they're still there. So before I left, you could troll over it. And you look on Clearview and it's just, there's just full of them, and it's it's other fish too. But I think that presentation was enough to trigger a reaction bite out of a fish out of.
Is that why you went with the 3/8 instead of a quarter or 5/16 or something? You wanted to get it down there and get the fish to go, okay, what just happened?
Yeah, they're like, whoa, what just? Yeah. And so you got when that happens, also you got brim or not crawfish, brim or crappie.
Yep.
You get a little react. All of a sudden, this ecosystem down there that everybody's just in la la land or doing nothing. All of a sudden, just something happens, and and those brim or crappie or whatever chase your weight or your and all of a sudden the bass was like, oh heck no, I'm gonna eat it. And I think they just run over. It's like it's kind of like when you're fishing a crankbait and you get that deflection off a cover and trigger a reaction bite. That drop shots, it's doing the same kind of thing in a different way.
It's hard to beat that rebarb hook.
It's awesome.
Like the OG.
Yeah.
The OG rebarb hook.
Great. The owner cover shot's great, but that rebarb is. I've used it for years. I'm surprised more people don't.
I think they do. They just don't talk about it. Like I think a lot of the drop shot guys. Do you go with a small, like a 1/0?
1/0's my favorite.
1/0.
Yeah.
Looks a little bit small on a 7-inch worm, but you're like, dude, I don't miss them on it. Like it.
Well, if and two, you get back to action. So that one of the keys to the drop shot is how much action a bait can have and stay in their face, and the bigger your hook gets, the more you take away from whatever the action of that bait is. So ideally you want the smallest hook I can get away with that I can still get the hookups and put them in the boat. So I think I probably could have gone with a 2/0, but I don't know if I would have gotten as many bites as I got with the 1/0 because they were so finicky. But definitely, wouldn't have gone any bigger than a 2/0 for sure.
Your son Gage, right?
Gage, yeah.
Was he pretty pumped?
He was more enamored by the big cardboard check than he was the trophy.
That's fair. That's fair.
That's to him, the trophy, and later on he wanted to get his picture with the trophy, but he loved the big check.
I guess kind of the last thing I would talk about is I interview a lot of people, Greg, and a lot of guys after they win say, dude, winning leads to more winning. Like once you have that and you have it, it kind of has opened the door. And you see that statistically, a lot of guys who take a long time to crack their first dub, then find themselves magically in that position to get it. They're like, I just never thought it could happen to me. And then once it actually did happen, I understood some things. I learned about myself. I learned about some, and it puts me in. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, obviously you just won the thing. You haven't even fished another tournament after that, but having now had that feeling, do you see how that could potentially lead to more W's in the near future?
Yeah, I do. I mean, like I said, I've been close so many times. I knew what it took to put yourself in a position to win. Unfortunately, I hadn't been able to close the deal. This time we closed the deal. It gives you a lot of confidence, and it's a relief too. So you're not pressing so hard. One of the things in fishing is be able to fish free and make decisions on the fly and be confident in those. And when the more you try to press, the worse you're going to do. It's so hard to fish free and fish on your instincts and fish by feel. And so, having that load lifted off of you, I think could probably be the biggest factor of I don't have to and the financial side of it too, Matt. Like, look, that's the reality of this deal is it's high stakes, man. And, you're making a little or losing a lot most of the time. And so you get that boost from that big check, financially. You're like, okay, we're good this year. Now I can fish, now I can take some chances to try to win, and most of my career has not been like that. It's like, we got to cash checks to be able to keep, to pay the bills and keep doing this. And it's a real factor. Like, yeah, sure. I can be like, hey man, yeah, I'm gonna fish to win, like, oh, well, and then in 2 years try that for a little while and see how it works out. and you're not going to be doing it very long. So that, I mean, for me, like, man, and by the grace of God, it worked. Is I fished for checks, man, to be able to keep doing what I asked the good Lord to be able to do in the beginning, was to fish for a living. But now, we got a little cushion and we can take some chances. And two is qualifying for championships. Big part of our career was trying to get points so you qualified for the Classic, or get points so you qualified for the Red Crest. And to take the chances to win, sometimes you'd have to, you're sacrificing the possibility of getting the points you need to make the championship, which is, a lot of our seasons are defined by. So, all of that stuff's in play. So getting back to that, now I'm in the NPFL championship by winning. We got $100,000 in the bank. We can take some chances, and fish free and try to go for it and see what happens. So there's, that all of that stuff's in play.
I'll close it. You mentioned at the beginning, kind of before we went live, one of the things you thought was really cool was how many unexpected people had reached out, texted you, commented on that. It had to mean a lot after doing it. I mean, that's a sign that you're doing it right, Greg.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Matt. And that's, in the end, all the trophies, the money and all of that will go away. But the relationships, I think, is probably the biggest thing that I've taken away after doing this so long and looking back. The relationships that you build over time in the fishing industry is something special. And you know a lot of folks, but hearing from the other anglers, my peers, the guys that I've tried to beat and have been trying to beat me all these years, out there, doing the grind. Sure, I've got guys that I consider my friends out there. All of them I respect, because I know what they're going through. But there were guys, that I know didn't have my number and went and got my number from somebody to send me a text, that kind of thing. Or came up to me, stayed after the tournament and came up to me just to congratulate me, when they could be go ahead, getting on the road, getting headed home back to their families. So that was a huge, huge deal, to me. It meant a lot, kind of a stamp of approval on, what we've been doing out there, that, the guys appreciate it. We're genuinely happy for me.
I want to go back to that bait fuel. So I've got a couple different types of the bait fuel. I want to pull it up here. Was this the stuff that you're squirting in the bag?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. The bait fuel gel.
Yeah, just that's just the original formula. Put that in the bag, the night before. A lot of my baits I'll kind of have set up in 3,700 boxes. In the boat, plastic, just kind of a sample, like a sampler basically that I keep in the boat so I can not have so many bags and boxes in the boat. And I'll even put a little bit of that in the trays. When you do that, it can dry a little bit over time, but I don't know, it gives me a good feeling. I look in there and see that I'd already put it in there, and it washes off. Is the stuff, if you put it in 3,700 box, it's going to dry and look a little crusty, but your bait's going to be great, and it's going to be softer than it was before. And that crusty stuff, as soon as you hit the water, it's going to come off. But the bait fuel that went in the plastic is in there, and it's going to slowly, come out and work as a fish attractant. But if you got a bag, most guys, if you're practicing for a tournament, you go out there and you're like, hey, I'm catching them on so-and-so, that bait and that color that you got the confidence in going into tournament day. That night before, when you're getting your tackle ready, that's when you put a little bit in there, work it into the pack. Don't fill the whole pack. You don't, just a few drops, a little strip, work that into the bait, let them marinate overnight. That's where I've seen the biggest difference.
Lincoln says my bait fuel, when I put it, turns into brown boogers. What am I doing wrong? I experienced that, but I also was trying to put it in there for weeks and weeks because I'm a big scent guy. I try them all. Yeah. I feel like the bait fuel doesn't have to be marinating as long as some of the others, like a day, two, like way just as effective as I put it in and then did it like the 2 or 3 month thing. And then it looked like the little, remember the old Elmer's cement glue that you used to do for like craft projects as a kid with the brush.
Yeah, it will do that.
It kind of turned into that, but if you just put it in there for a day or two, no issues whatsoever on it. I prefer the stick, actually. Like I use the bait fuel stick on like jerk baits and stuff.
Well, the gel, the fuse gel, if you haven't tried it, is like that's the one like I keep in my pocket because I'm a top water and jerk bait guy. I like the gel. I can keep that in my pocket. It's like in a tube, like a little toothpaste looking tube. Okay. And put it on there, and it's a little more sticky, so it stays on there a little longer. But I can also, if I'm trying a different plastic, I can put that gel on the plastic real quick, and it kind of sticks quicker. It's not one that you don't marinate with the fuse gel. That's something you put on there and start casting kind of thing. And I like that because I can put it on, any type of bait that I'm throwing at the time. But the big thing with the bait fuel, like the kind of the flaky, the crusty stuff is like when air's been on it and it's just sat there and dried somewhere. And that's why I said, I've got those boxes, those 3,700 boxes. I got a line of baits that I put some on like 3 months ago when I was, at some tournament in the other part of the country. And then I opened that box and I'm looking with the bait color has not changed. And it's just as true as it was. I've got some little flakes in there, but like, I'll be honest with you personally, when I look in there like that, I'm like, oh, that's soaked in there really
that's
good.
To go.
and that flaky stuff, like it washes off, man. Like as soon as you rig your bait, it washes off. Like I'm not worried about what it looks like to me. I'm worried about what the fish think about it, so as soon as it goes in there, the color's true, the bait's softer than it was before after marinating like that. And dude, the stuff works. I mean, they got science behind it. Like I said, after this past week and dealing with fish that were so hard to get them to bite, like I'm convinced that it works.
I think scent has become, this is my uneducated opinion, but I, in my personal opinion, have put way more into scent over the last couple of years, especially with the fact that we're now putting baits in the majority of tournaments in front of fish for longer periods of time, and fish that have seen more offerings that aren't, the scope I think has made scent a valuable.
Yes.
And I've seen it like, I mean, I'll be straight up. Like the first time I noticed it was with the Max Scent stuff. Like I'd be like, how can you flip into a bush with just a straight plastic, and then like, you're with a buddy and he's 3 or 4 to 1 out of it, and you're like, okay, it has to be something with that scent where like it goes down and they bite it, and then you see it following minnows or following the Nico stuff. And like I said, there's a lot of good scents out there. I carry them all. I have the Max Scent stuff. I have the Taku juice and shrimp powder gel, whatever it is, in Tupperware. I have the bait fuel tubes with the sticks. I have like a whole scent container that's got all of them in it. And I think it makes a difference, and it could just be me, but I think it does. No, especially when you're putting it in fish that have seen baits and had baits in them. It's a big difference. Like, 8-9 years ago, you put a bait in front of a fish and he's like, my God, it's something to eat. Well, now every single fish in those piles is getting something put on it.
They've seen it all, man. Before sonar, the fish are more pressure than they've ever been, because we're able to put a bait in front of them more than we ever have been. And so anything that can give you the slice advantage ends up being a huge advantage, because the margin of error has been tightened now that we can all put baits in front of these fish on, throughout the year. And it's a scientific study. It's a natural response that the fish have to it. It basically tells them, and it really doesn't even have per se smell like we smell it, but the fish and the way they smell, they pick it up in the water from a distance, and it's water soluble. I think it's a big point I need to make is they can pick bait fuel up from a greater distance because it's water soluble. That's how they process it. And then the taste, when and I'll give you the example, like in the tournament when I was practicing, when I first figured the deal out, I just had these baits and I rigged them up and I started pitching them around on the drop shot. And the first 2 or 3 things I pitched at, I got bit pretty quick, but I couldn't get a hook in them to see what size they were. And I didn't have the bait fuel on it. At the time, I just grabbed them out of the pack. So I had my little bottle of, bait fuel that had been sitting on the rack of my Phoenix right there where the little passenger rod rack is. I just let it sit right there. I'm like, let me rub some of this in on it, see what, I put it on there. The next pitch, I catch, a fish that was close to 2 pounds, which not a big fish, but I just caught one, and it's a decent keeper bass. As the day went on, I stayed with it. I ended up catching another almost 3, and then I caught a 4-pounder. And then I'm talking about 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon in Alabama heat, blaring sun, and I'm like, okay, that from then on it was that bait, and it was that bait with bait fuel on it.
You got time? I have a couple more questions.
Let's do it.
You don't see unique logos very often in the industry, but you've got the B with the Blair underneath it.
Yeah.
Like the hat of that. What is that a non-endemic that we're working with here,
Yeah.
Greg?
Yeah, man. They're great. That's awesome.
Okay.
That's Blair Logistics. Yeah. Thanks for mentioning that.
I was just curious. I was unfamiliar with the logo, so I was like, okay, I didn't know that's some secret project, or are we working with the non-endemic here?
No, they're a flatbed trucking company.
Okay.
Birmingham. And so, yeah, they've been a great partner. Of course, we got a really cool wrap on the truck. If you see my truck rolling around, it looks like one of their trucks with the wheels of my truck. Looks like it's the wheels of the big rig truck. And it's kind of a cool look, but that's a Blair truck we've got on there. Been a great partner, man. They came on, that first year I came on with Bass Pro Tour, and they really saw, a lot of results. It's always good for a non-endemic, to see the value in our sport. And I think they saw an immediate benefit, from the truck being out there advertising up and down all over the country to being on camera, and they, one of the biggest things was they started hearing from their competitors like, hey, how'd you get into this thing? And I thought, oh, I don't know if that's good or bad. And they were like, no, that's great, because they're seeing it, people are seeing it, and it's having an impact. So on that note, I think it's important for the non-endemics to realize, like, this is a great platform. Bass fishing is a great avenue to get your name and your company out there. Even if you're not a fishing company, it's a great reward on investment for sure.
Last thing. Did you watch the College World Series? I mean, I'm here at Shawnee, Oklahoma, University of Oklahoma, college graduate. I mean, were you fishing during that, or did you get into
fishing? I watched until Auburn. Auburn got bumped out and they didn't make it. They were supposed to, or they didn't. But got their War Eagle anyway. We're used to it.
Historic run by the Sooners there.
That was, man. And I love watching college. I played college baseball. Yep. You played hockey, right? Did you play baseball too, Matt?
I play baseball. I'll tell you. So I remember the last time I ever touched dirt on a baseball field. So I was like 15 years old, and I was on one of those travel teams. Uh-huh. And I had never like gone yard, right? I was a good defensive player, played shortstop.
Yeah.
And we were at it was every year over the 4th of July, my parents would go up to Canada for a week, fish at this lake up in Canada. And we were in a tournament. Our team was awful, but I had to leave. Like if we had moved on, I had already told the coach, hey, I've got to leave. Like for the last 2 games, I won't be there because our family goes on this vacation. They're going to leave. So the first game, I go yard twice in this tournament. Like first time I'd ever hit it over the fence. And I was pretty livid with my dad that he was going to, I'm like, dude, I've played the best I've ever played. I'm on this travel team. I'm not going to, it's like the end of, it was like the end of the summer tournament. Like I want to stay, like we're in it to win this thing.
Yeah.
So the game before, like I was having a great, so the game before, the last game before they were going to pull me out, we had to leave for Canada. I was playing shortstop and we had a lefty, notorious. I'll never, this kid, all he did was manufacture sharp ground balls to short. So I knew like it was
some action.
First inning, first pitch to me, airmail it to first, error number 1. Second batter, fumble it, error number 2, runners on second and third. Third, now I'm really nervous, right through my legs. So 3 errors, first 3 batters. Coach moves me to second. What's the next guy do? Pops up to second. Drop the ball at second. They end up scoring a run. I get pulled. I told my dad after, I vividly remember this. I said, cannot wait to get to Canada. that was the last baseball game that I ever played in. 3 errors in 1 inning, got pulled, never saw the field again, moved on, stuck with hockey and fishing.
Never missed it after that.
It's
right?
almost like in fishing. Like I feel like in sports, like if the ball or the puck or something will find you and it will test you. It was like you lose that 4.5 pounder first thing. It's going to find you, whatever in the cosmos is going to say, all right, here it is again. Can you overcome the mental of the visual of you jumping this fish off on the trolling motor, knowing here it is, we're giving you another shot. It will find you regardless of how it works and what sport it is.
Yeah. It's such a crazy phenomenon, man. And you're right. Throughout sports, that momentum is a real thing. And it is so hard to reverse, it's hard to reverse negative momentum. But it's also hard to reverse the positive momentum. So you get out there and you get off to a good start and you're clicking. Like a lot of times you can carry that throughout the day or carry that throughout the tournament. Unfortunately, the negative side is the same way. It's really hard to flip it around. But if you can and you can get good at doing that, that's a huge plus. In fishing, it's so hard to stay locked in. You get the emotions, you're tired, man. You've been out there practicing. You're beat down, and you're trying to fight through it. So it can be harder mentally to stay locked in. But if you can, and I think we did a good job of that final day at Logan Martin. If you can stay locked in and keep fishing strong and fish through it, we say you can still overcome it. And thank goodness, we were able to do that on that final day up there at Logan.
Well, congratulations. I know it put a smile on my face, a smile on a lot of other people's faces. Talked to a lot of guys that are like, man, that was awesome to see Greg get the win. Also, shout out to the NPFL for surviving canceled tournaments due to high water and financial stuff and changes and scheduling changes. And over the years, and when they first started saying there's no need for another professional tour, and then to have the balls to go no live scope the last couple years and to draw that field, to create opportunities for very limited number of professional anglers to have moments like this that benefit their career, that drag them forward. Just the fact that we're considering an NPFL win, a major win, one of the big 3. I mean, it's been FLW or MLF and Bassmaster like that. To have NPFL up there says that they're doing a lot of great things, providing a lot of great opportunities. And you're a prime example of a lot of things that organization has to, and will continue to have to go to, just like all 3 of them, that everything's kind of changing. But I think that's so badass that platform exists and that you're able to get your first major win on it. And I would not be shocked if there are several more to come in the upcoming tournaments and years, Greg. So I can't thank you enough for jumping on BTL. I know what it's like coming back after a BPT and then an NPFL and all the calls and texts and getting things back in order before you jump back on the road to finish the season. So thank you very much.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much, Matt, for having me on. It's great to see you. Great to talk to you again.
Yep. Take it easy.
All right, buddy.
There you go, Greg. I will say, like, if I was Greg, I would have had the $100,000 check in the background right there. Like, I would have put that up on the wall. I would have gone ahead and just gotten the drill out and said, we'll deal with the holes in it afterwards. So we're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, wrap up what we got going for the rest of the week. This is BTL on a Tuesday, wrapping up the month of June. We'll be back right after this.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Basscat. Feel the rush.
Before there were hashtags, there were handshakes and shared stories. They gave us confidence to make our first cast and chase our dreams. They taught us to fish, and in the process, taught us about life. They taught us that success isn't just about reaching the top. It's about lifting others up. The future isn't just about selling tackle. It's about 3 simple words. Let's go fishing. Here's to the original influencers.
At Beat Down Outdoors, we know you depend on your gear to hold up in any condition. We built for that. We test for that. In fact, we pride ourselves in that. Because we know when the time comes to test your gear, you aren't going to take it easy, so we won't. We build premium, made-in-the-USA products that you can rely on in the moments when your equipment should be the last thing on your mind.
I fish in some of the worst elements across the country. Spring, that's a giant, dude. Summer, oh my gosh. Hi, look at that thing. Winter, it's so cold. And fall, got a big one. That's awesome.
Being comfortable and staying dry is the only option.
AFCO, any fish, any water.
When I'm in a tournament, conditions are constantly changing and every second matters. With the Deep Dive app, I can instantly pull up all the current lake conditions all in one spot. So no more looking at weird government websites. In just one quick glance, I have water clarity, water level, wave forecast. It's all right there in the Deep Dive app. Download the Deep Dive app and get all the tools you need to put together an awesome tournament.
Pro Bass Adventures is reinventing Mexico bass fishing. With boats equipped with 12-inch Garmin units and LiveScope Plus, free loaner fishing rods, and no-cost airport transportation, Pro Bass Adventures is proudly putting you in the best position for success. Pro Bass Adventures has lodges on Lake Baccarat and Lake El Salto, Mexico's 2 best trophy largemouth bass lakes. Visit probassadventures.com or email probassadventures@gmail.com. The official Mexico fishing lodge of Bass Talk Live. All right, wrapping things up here. I know told Greg we'd take a break 20 minutes in, but it's hard to bust up a good conversation like that. Truly one of the good guys in the industry. And like I said, there's certain guys who it's like, hey, when are they going to get their first win? And I did not realize Greg had not won. I thought for sure he'd won like at least an FL Tour event. I knew he'd been close on the Elite Series, obviously that Bassmaster Classic, but consummate professional. You know, a lot of the guys who get the headlines, and rightfully so, Jacob Wheelers, Trey McKinney's, the guys who, you know, win like Bank Shaw's currently like that win. But there is a core group of anglers that make professional fishing work. There always has been, there always will be, that do things the right way, put their head down, go to work, make a solid living for their family, represent their sponsors incredibly well, and make the most of the opportunities when they're presented to themselves. And that's the Greg Vinson, a great example of that. I used to spend, actually, Greg at one point was with Duckett. So I got to spend a lot of time in the boat with him back when we were doing like the Duckett on tour and stuff. So I've spent a handful of days in the boat watching Greg fish, and very methodical, very analytical the way he approaches the water. Where he is in Alabama, and that, he has grass, the water willow, the Coosa, the largemouth, the TVAs, the current driven fish. He has a lot of opportunity, and you see a lot of the guys out of that neck of the woods in Alabama, Wes Logan, a Greg Vinson, a Scott Canterbury. I could name names for days on that, but that is a really good part of the country to be able to go to any type of fishery from coast to coast and catch fish. You just learn about fish behavior, the current driven fisheries, how they sit in the grass. It's a really, really good part of the country to become a really, really good angler. And there's a lot of them that come out of that neck of the woods. So I do want to point out, yesterday was a recorded show, Michael Harlan. It's titled Outhouse to the Penthouse. You do like shows like the Ish was like everyone wanted to listen to the Ish show that I did 5 days ago there. And Ish was fantastic and stuff, but like not as many people know who Michael Harlan is, mainly because Michael Harlan hasn't caught him on 7-inch tubes and has 3 century belts and millions of dollars of earnings so far. But if you are looking, and you may have to fast forward through a little bit to where he gets to it, if you're looking for one of the wildest stories in 2026 of a dude who is resilient and extremely talented on the water. Like, he just made the Bassmaster Classic because he won the last Division II Central Open on the Mississippi River, also made the Bassmaster EQs. The dude went through it this year. We're talking like backup boats, broken down, travel at like DQs, but just because like he accidentally had a 6 fish in his live well that he didn't realize until the next morning, so he had to self-report. Just crazy stuff. Like, he started in 200th in the points, somehow managed to end up finishing 30th in the points. Like, every single tournament he had like trailers break and have to get welded on the side of the road, last minute fish, stuck, motors broke down, tournaments with no practice, borrows it's a cool story. And then also obviously Ish was fantastic. Like, Ish did an hour and a half of evening show with Ish, so if you haven't had that. So we'll be back with another show tomorrow morning. Then a new color drops day 4 with Frank Scalish, and then it's the 4th of July weekend. We're actually going out to Utah for a couple days. And there's a thing called like the Stadium of Rocks, or I never remember the name of it, but we're gonna go watch some fireworks there, and then I think I pick up the new Bass Cat, and then I'm headed to Lake Champlain at the end of the month, and then things get kind of wild in August, September, October, that type of thing. So, all right, that's all we got for today. Same time, same place. Tomorrow we'll talk to everyone then. See ya.